Morning to you. What's your take on all of this?
Well, I think Donald Trump is definitely wrong when he says that the Bernie Sanders campaign is sending these people. I don't doubt that a lot of these left-wing sort of agitation groups are supporting Bernie Sanders, the type of people who might be supporting Bernie Sanders, but they're definitely not being sent by the campaign. They're also not really, there's no right for them to come and disrupt these campaign events, and I think Donald Trump is right about that. On the other hand, you know, Donald Trump has said some, I think, incendiary rhetoric and has encouraged a lot of his supporters to go ahead and fight back. That would, I think, is a big break from the way that sort of politics as usual or normal politics is done in this country. When there is some kind of, you know, outbreak of, protest at a political event, a lot of times political candidates will say, look, let them say their piece and then move on. Donald Trump's different. He says punch back, and I think that's caused a lot more problems than there would be if we were talking about a Ted Cruz rally, for instance.
This is a really important point. Anthony Scaramucci just made that point, actually, during the commercial break. Anthony, you would think that you're allowed to go and have a peaceful rally without being interrupted, but the response from Donald Trump, how do you see it?
Yeah, I'm not sure what Michael would say about this. They had to know that there were going to be paid protesters at these events. Just going back to Occupy Wall Street, Maria, you know that's the game. I'm just surprised by his response and the whole throwing gasoline on top of it. How does that look presidential, and how does that help him win the independents and the more moderate people that he's going to need to eventually be the president, if that's where he wants to go with this?
It might, this kind of rhetoric, and listen, I find it repugnant what the progressive left-wing liberals have been doing on college campuses, trying to shut down free speech, trying to shut down conservative speech.
I agree with you.
However, when you throw it, to your point, when you're whipping these supporters into a frenzy by saying punch them in the face, talking about my campaign's going to look at paying the legal fees of that old dude who basically elbowed that protester in the face down in North Carolina, it might gin up support with your most fervent supporters and get them to the polls. But if you win the nomination and then have to run against maybe Hillary Clinton, it's not going to help him.
I also think, you were talking about paid protesters, but there's also a natural attraction. If the internet is full of scenes of protesters being bullied, that's going to bring people to your events who are saying, I hope you try and bully me, because I'll fight back. I mean, it's like match to gasoline. You're going to bring to the event the people who are most likely to cause a problem.
Yeah, and even when, even when he says, Michael Warren, take him out, go home to mommy. I mean, the comments that he has said in response to some protesters have been fueling the fire, hasn't? I mean, I remember just last week, right, Anthony? He said, oh, go home to mommy. I mean, just getting everybody really, ramped up to fight.
Yeah, I thought Marco Rubio over the weekend actually had the best analysis of this, which is that Donald Trump seems to bring out the worst of everybody, of his opponents, of his supporters, and I think that a lot of people in these states, again, we're only halfway through the nominating process here. A lot of Republican voters in these states may look at this and think, gosh, we want to blow up Washington, but I don't know if we want to blow up the entire country.
Yeah. And I'll just point out something the Wall Street Journal notes in an editorial today. It's not like Donald Trump has been a champion of free speech himself, because in recent weeks he's talked about changing the libel laws so he can make it easier to sue the press. He likes to threaten to sue the press, and he doesn't find room. So, again, he wants to go after the First Amendment in the same way that the left-wing protesters on college campuses want to go after it.
And Michael, let me ask you something. We've waited all year for something to actually slow Trump's momentum down. And every time he says something over the top, or there's some event that would derail almost any other candidate, it actually just causes them to pick up momentum. Do you think this might be the final straw, where this really turns off a broad swath of potential supporters?
I'm not going to wade into that minefield of trying to predict this. I just will say that there has been possibly a cumulative effect of all of this. And let's not forget, I do think Donald Trump is a good example of somebody who can manipulate media coverage to get things off of the things he doesn't want to talk about. Just late last week, we were talking about a reporter from Breitbart News, who's now resigned from Breitbart News, who was roughed up by the campaign manager of Donald Trump's campaign. That was starting to look really bad, and I think the media was starting to really at least reconsider its coverage of Donald Trump, and now we're talking about something else. You know, that's the way it goes, but this is something that Donald Trump, I think, has been a master of, which is distracting us from talking about things that he doesn't want to talk about.
This is not just Trump's responsibility, all of these presidential candidates, and I'm saying Hillary Clinton and Bernie Sanders have to come out and say, don't go to the rallies, do not protest.